Miko, Zilla. Miko, Zilla. Greetings and welcome to my haunted mansion. Me and my husband just closed on it. The realtor assured us that no recent murders have occurred here. It's got a beautiful clawfoot bathtub, a library with hidden entrances, and even a secret room in the basement that we cannot seem to figure out how to open. The previous owners were just too lame to hang out with these cool-ass ghosts, and so we got it for a steal. But for real, welcome to my channel. This is Miko Zilla. If you're new here, I usually sing songs with my ukulele, but today I'm here to tell you about my favorite horror movies of all time. It is spooky season, so I figured that this would be a good time to do said video. This is my cat. She likes to hang out sometimes. So anyway, it's spooky season, and I thought it would be fun to run down one of my favorite topics, which is horror movies. I've been a fan of horror for as long as I can remember. I used to rent the Goosebumps VHS tapes with my friend Jason every year for Halloween, and honestly, probably all year. We'd just be watching Goosebumps and hanging out. And that evolved into, later in my life, more adult horror, and it's still something that I really love to this day. A little bit of a disclaimer to this video, these are my personal favorites. I'm not trying to say that these are the greatest movies of all time. There's definitely some questionable choices on here, and some controversial opinions. But do not send me hate. I recognize that everyone has different taste in movies, especially horror movies. There's things that different people enjoy about different films, and I'm no exception. So link me a comment in the description, what's your favorite scary movie, because chances are I love that movie too. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm just looking at my notes here. So these are in no particular order. The first movie I want to talk about today is Evil Dead, the remake, which came out in 2013. This is, of course, the remake to the classic horror movie that came out in 1981 by Sam Raimi. The remake was directed by Fede Alvarez, and what I really enjoy about this film is that they took the elements from the original. The same sort of things happened, but they took those elements and just ramped them up into the 21st century, very modern horror, and it actually was very intense and scary. This movie really stuck with me, and it's something that I love to rewatch. I can rewatch it any number of times. I think that the writing was extremely clever, how the main character, who is played by Jane Levy, she was also in Don't Breathe. The main character has a addiction that her and her friends escape to this cabin to try to overcome that, help her go through the withdrawal symptoms. And as she's getting possessed by the Evil Dead, they think it's just her reaction to the withdrawal. And that leads into all kinds of horrific hijinks. I really love this movie, and I could watch it anytime. Pretty much every movie on this list is something of a comfort movie that I could watch at any point in time and be happy. I just love it. The next movie on my list is Hereditary by Ari Aster, which was released in 2018. This movie is, to me, a modern classic. I think it's absolutely amazing. Ari Aster has such a unique filmmaking style, and this was, I believe, his first feature film, and the follow-up was, of course, Midsummer, which is a totally different vibe, but you can still see that kind of special aesthetic he brings to the films. This is about a family who starts having paranormal experiences, and there's of course the iconic scene where I don't even know if I should say it. If you've seen the movie, you know the scene I'm talking about. And that just sticks with you. This is a movie that I've thought a lot about, and it's something that you don't really appreciate until you watch it a second or third time. There's things that I didn't notice on a first run through, and that's stuff that I love to see in a horror movie. Kind of these cryptic little clues that when you go back and watch it, everything kind of makes more sense, and it just makes rewatching the film really fun. I also just want to add that Toni Collette is amazing. She's iconic in horror, and this film is no exception. She's just a phenomenal actor. The next movie on my list is Starry Eyes, which came out in 2014. This was co-directed by Kevin Kolsch and Dennis Widmeyer. And by the way, if I pronounce anybody's name wrong, I'm really sorry. Anyway, Starry Eyes is the story of a girl living in LA. She is a waitress hoping to have her big break into the acting and film industry. And things start to take a turn for her when she goes on a strange audition. This movie was super low budget, but I think that what they did with this film on such a small budget was incredible. They managed to create tension, they used practical effects, the writing was strong, the acting was good. I thought this was an incredible film. If you're someone who's into conspiracy theories and the Illuminati, this could be an interesting, fun film for you for those reasons as well. Without giving too many spoilers away, there is a casting agency that is up to some dark, shady things, and I just really love the way the story progresses, and this is, again, something I could rewatch at any time. The next movie on my list I want to talk about is none other than It. This, of course, is kind of a two-in-one. I'm talking about the remakes, which came out in 2017 and 2019, respectively. I do personally prefer It Chapter 1, but It Chapter 2 was also phenomenal. The casting in these films was incredible. The adult versions of the children I thought were perfectly cast. They all really embodied the characters from the book, which I love. Anyone that knows me knows I'm a huge Stephen King fan, and It is probably way up there with one of my favorite books of his. I think it's one of his masterpieces. I also have a special connection to this movie. I saw the original 1990 miniseries featuring Tim Curry when I was about 7 years old, and it scared the ever-loving crap out of me when I was a kid. I couldn't take a shower, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't go anywhere without thinking Pennywise was gonna sneak up behind me, and to be completely honest, I am still afraid of clowns. So needless to say, I saw this movie on opening day, and it proceeded to give me nightmares. I think it's fantastic. Like I said, the acting, the effects, the writing, everything about it is phenomenal. I love that it came out 27 years after the original 1990 miniseries, because Pennywise is known to resurface every 27 years. I also like that they modernized it. So in the book and the original miniseries, it takes place as they're children in the 1950s, and as they're adults, it's the 80s. But in this one, they are children in the 80s and they are adults in modern times, which I just thought was a cool element. If you're gonna remake something, that's an element that I really like, is the modernization, not just as far as the scares and the technical effects and all that, but just the environment that they're in being modern really adds to it, and just everything about this film. They were directed by Andy Muschietti. Again, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing things wrong. The next movie on my list is Last House on the Left, which is another remake. I kind of have a lot of remakes on here. Controversial. I like horror remakes. Last House on the Left, the remake came out in 2009. The original Wes Craven movie came out in 1972. The remake was directed by Dennis Ialdis. This movie is not for everyone. It's an exploitation film. It came out kind of at the height of the exploitation era in the 1970s. It follows a girl who is unfortunately assaulted, which is a big reason why this movie is not for everyone. Major trigger warning if you've never seen this movie and you're gonna see it. Just be prepared. There is sexual assault in this movie. And of course, like any other horror movie, plenty of violence and gore. What I love about this movie is that it's a harrowing story. We follow this girl, we're with her at her lowest low as she's attacked. And as the film unfolds, the tables kind of turn, and her parents are out to get revenge. So this is peak revenge horror to me. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. My cat is trying to get at me. Anyway, this was kind of a formative movie as I was in high school. This came out when I think I was in 9th grade. Horror has always just kind of comforted me, and this was one of the films I'd always go to when I was upset. Anyway, phenomenal remake, great story. Can't really give much away without doing spoilers. The next film on my list is probably the most controversial choice on my list of top 10 favorite horror movies, and that of course is Nightmare on Elm Street 2, specifically the second one, which came out in 1985. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the original film by Wes Craven, which came out the year prior, 1984. It's absolutely iconic. It launched the entire franchise, and I of course love seeing Johnny Depp in that cute little crop top he wears. But I specifically really love Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, and I'll tell you why. As a young gay person in the closet, it really had this kind of weird magnetism. What they did in this film was subvert the expectation that the final girl would be a female. Instead, it had a male lead who is a gay actor, and he really played kind of the final girl. He subverted sort of the expectations of what masculinity would look like on film, and there's a lot of gay subtext in this film, which did things to me that I didn't quite understand when I first saw it. But watching this now as a fully gay adult, I absolutely love this film. It's not the best in the franchise. I find it hilarious. I find it extremely enjoyable. There's so many great things about this film. There actually is a documentary available on Shudder about this film, and specifically sort of the gay aspects to it. It's called Scream Queen, and again, it's available for streaming on Shudder. I found it really interesting and informative. The next movie on my list is The Strangers, which came out in 2008. This was directed by Brian Bertino, and there of course was a sequel a couple years back in 2018, but the original is on my list. I absolutely love this movie to this day. I think it's one of the most effective movies in terms of building up tension. The scene that always sticks with me is when one of the main characters is just standing in the kitchen, kind of waiting for her boyfriend to come back, and one of the strangers appears kind of in the doorway behind her. And it's shot in a way where you really just see his mask in the door frame, and he doesn't immediately attack her in this moment. It's just strictly to build tension, and I found it so effective. I loved that this movie features a small cast. It just goes to show you how creativity and good writing can really drive a film without needing a huge ensemble, a huge set, multiple locations. It can all be done in this little house with a very small cast. I just think that this film is phenomenal. I can watch this anytime. It's by far one of my favorites, which is why it's on this list. I don't need to say that. What else can I say about this film? Something about home invasion films has always really done it for me. I love the subgenre. I love the slasher subgenre. So it just really does it for me. The acting is great. The character design is so creepy. And just like imagine yourself in that situation. You're in a cabin, kind of very isolated, nobody else around, and some strangers show up to terrorize you for no reason. Very scary to me. The next movie that is on my list is a absolute classic, The Shining, which came out in 1980. It was directed by Stanley Kubrick. What's not iconic about this film? It's so visually stunning. It really brought the story to life. I will say it's vastly different from the Stephen King novel. I know Stephen King really hates the Kubrick version of this story, but it's just so iconic that, sorry Stephen, I love this movie. Like I said, it's visually stunning. There's so many scenes that you could see a still from it and instantly know what it's from. Instantly think of 10 plus spoofs that have been done throughout pop culture. You see references to it everywhere. And it's just one of those films that will go down in history as one of the greatest horror films of all time. Not to mention, Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall were both absolutely phenomenal in this movie, and I know specifically for Shelley Duvall, the Stanley Kubrick really put her through a lot of things, and there's stuff you can read up about that, but her fear was genuine in a lot of these scenes, which is just another reason why the film is so effective. I got 2 more movies on my list here for you. Second to last one I'm going to talk about is VHS, which came out in 2012. This was directed by various individuals. It is an anthology film that centers around the idea of these haunted or just creepy, messed up VHS tapes that these burglars kind of find and start watching. So each VHS tape they watch is done by a separate director, it's a separate story, and this really kind of solidified my love for anthology films. My favorite short from the original 2012 VHS is The Siren. If you've seen this movie, you know exactly the segment I'm talking about. It is so creepy and so good. And I love anthologies because they allow you to express these unique, kind of weird, quirky ideas that wouldn't necessarily work in a traditional full-length film. So after seeing this, I kind of got into a bunch of different anthologies: ABCs of Death, Creepshow, Twilight Zone, Black Mirror. All these things are anthologies that I love. And not to mention, bring it up again, Goosebumps was also an anthology. So I mean, hey, I guess Goosebumps is the thing that really got me to love anthologies. Anyway, the VHS franchise is really cool. They had 2 sequels, each in a consecutive year after that. VHS 2 is maybe actually my favorite. There's one of the segments is about, I think this guy was like biking in the woods, like mountain biking, and he gets attacked by a zombie. And the footage, it's all found footage too, I don't know if I mentioned that, but the footage is from the biker's GoPro, and so it shows him from being human, getting attacked by a zombie, and then turning into a zombie, and it's from the first person perspective of the zombie at that point, which I just thought it was hilarious. Never been done to my knowledge in the zombie subgenre. Highly recommend. But I do not recommend VHS Viral. That was trash. By the way, this list is completely arbitrary. It can and probably will change again within the year. Before I tell you the final movie on my list and my top #1 favorite horror movie of all time, I just wanted to mention some honorable mentions. Films that easily could have made this list, either because they were very formative for me growing up, or they had unique ideas for the time. And these movies include Don't Breathe, The Conjuring, Paranormal Activity, Saw, Suspiria, and The Thing. I said that these were in no particular order, but this one is definitely at the top of the list. This movie is endlessly iconic. I watch it probably 4 times a year. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, not just horror. And that, of course, is the 1996 Wes Craven classic that is Scream! Oh my god, you guys, what's not to love about Scream? First of all, the cast, incredible. Drew Barrymore, Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, David Arquette, Matthew Lillard, incredible. What's not to love about this movie? The writing was amazing. The acting was amazing. It has comedic moments. And it has, you know, everything I love in a horror movie. The comedy, it has a mass killer, slasher, home invasion. And the killer, something I really like about this movie is the killer makes very human mistakes. You think about a lot of the slasher movies, and if the killer's not outright supernatural like Freddy Krueger, they kind of have supernatural qualities to them. They're mysterious, you don't necessarily know their background, they seem to go from one place to another very quickly. Even though the main character will be running and the killer's only doing a slow walk, they always will catch up. That sort of thing does not happen in Scream. It's a very human killer. Spoiler alert, but if you haven't seen Scream, like, what are you doing with your life? The fact that the killer turned out to be 2 killers, incredible. Just the writing, it kind of has this mystery element of who done it throughout the whole thing. And as soon as you're convinced of who done it, I mean, it turns out to be, it could be somebody else. So anyway, this film, so iconic, spoofed a million times on a million shows, just really started this whole franchise. The entire Scream franchise is so good, just a really fun time. Sometimes the horror movies are just a little bit too dark, but these are lighthearted enough that pretty much anyone can enjoy it. And I think this was a really game-changing movie as far as the horror genre goes. How the characters will kind of deconstruct horror tropes and tell you, as a viewer, kind of what to expect, was very new at the time. And I think that movies like A Cabin in the Woods would not exist without Scream. Anyway, this movie is iconic. Wes Craven, apparently Wes Craven's my favorite director. His name has showed up on this list multiple times. I just think that Scream in particular is probably the most important iconic horror movie to come out during my lifetime. And I think that currently horror is in need of a little bit of a rejuvenation, a revival, and maybe stop doing all these remakes, even though I like remakes, don't tell anyone. Horror will always have a special place in my heart. Happy spooky season, thank you for watching. If you liked this video, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. My handle on all 3 platforms is @Miko Zilla. Leave me a comment below, tell me what your favorite horror movie is, or if I've inspired you to watch any of my favorites, please tweet at me. Tell me what your favorites are, tell me what you liked about the movie, if you decide to watch any of these. And if not, enjoy a happy, safe holiday, keep social distancing, and like many of the iconic killers, wear a mask. So anyway, signing off for now. I'm gonna go try to open that creepy door in the basement and see what kind of murders took place there. Bye!